Sliding down the Shannon, where the water meets the sky, the green bank softly rolling as the quiet world goes by.
This is Christy Cunniffe, and he will give us a tour around the Meelick jetty, the Meelick lock, and this little islands over there. And yeah, we will find out what we can explore there, the history and yeah, everything.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's an interesting place. There's a lot of layers of history here in Meelick, and what we'll actually be doing is we're here in Keelog, which is the name of the townland here in Meelick. That we're standing here at the pier, right beside the River Shannon. But we're looking across into County Offaly.
Oh, on the other side.
On the other side.
Yes.
So the Shannon divides, literally divides Connacht here in this case, from Leinster, provincially, and then of course Galway from Offaly.
Yeah.
And that large body of land we see on the other side of the river is actually a large island called Inchurkey.
Ah, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we have layers, as I said, there are layers of history here. What we'll see today is we'll probably start with material going back to well, we mightn't start, but we won't follow a chronological order. Okay. What we'll do is we'll follow a walking order.
Yes.
As we approach stuff, we'll deal with it. But we'll be going back to the 12th and 13th century with some of the material we see, more of the 15th century, some 17th century, and a lot of 19th century then, both improvements to the river and also the presence of Napoleonic fortifications and that here.
Wow, a lot of stuff. So
a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff. It's a very interesting place.
Yeah, I'm really excited, so we will have a look.
Okay.
Off we go. We are in a very interesting place now. From which part of the history?
Well, what's interesting here is that we're standing on top of an early 20th century embankment, a levee to keep the floodwaters out. Oh, this was part of the rural or the electrification scheme, the hydroelectrification scheme, the first power station to be built in Ireland, the first major industrial power station. So we're standing on top of that. This bank that we're on runs for about 11 miles. So it's quite a major industrial embankment. Yeah. But it was actually cut through a 17th century, I suppose, castle fortification. And this particular fortification here was one of those, it should be a polygonal shaped earthwork castle from the Cromwellian period, mid 17th century. Yes. So and this would be about the 1640s or 1650s, that period.
And with this, they destroyed it,
They destroyed it, and that's part of it. We're actually on an island. and to look at it today, you don't realise you're actually standing on an island.
Yeah.
The only way you can understand this landscape is to come here with the first edition Ordnance Survey map in your hand. And you begin to realise this whole landscape here has been modified. But the eye of the archaeologist or the geographer or historian should allow you to interpret the earthworks. They don't look like much, but they're very, very important. So this, according to tradition, the Cromwellian soldiers blasted the gable end out of the Franciscan priory that we're going to visit in a few minutes. And if they did, we don't know whether they did or not. The inn certainly fell out of it for some reason or other. But if they did, it was probably from this fortification here. And this, again, it's sort of intertwining history as well, because Cromwell ends up in Ireland. Of course, what happens is he's a Republican. He wants to overthrow the king, Charles I, behead Charles I. The Cromwellians take over. You see a parliament in England for the first time, but you also see the Cromwellians then coming to Ireland. They're confiscating lands and all sorts of stuff. And it makes a huge difference to settlement patterns in Ireland, because new names and new families come in that take up masses of land. And that happens here in this parish with the heirs of Earthcourt. They were one of the big Cromwellian settlers in this region. But the important thing here is that we're actually looking at the remnants of a 17th century fortification or earthwork castle. What we're actually looking at here is we're looking at some of the original river. This whole area out here was untouched. It wasn't damaged in the 1830s and 40s as part of the improvements
so that's
for navigation.
Part of the real
the
nature,
real river, yes. And
of the Shannon.
what's so important here is that we still have some of the islands intact, but more importantly, we have a series of fish weirs or fish traps here. They're built in stone, they're V-shaped. You can actually see one of them in action out there. That's just more like a wall now. That doesn't have the V shape as such. But that's one of them. And the idea was that they were shaped like that with an open mouth, and a net would have been set at the end to trap eel and other fish.
Okay.
Now we know that these go back to the at least to the 17th century. That the Franciscans in the friary behind us had a license to take eel and fish at that stage, but they possibly go right back to the 15th century when they first founded the monastery, and they could even be here much earlier, because one of the
but you don't know.
You don't know, and one of the things that I suppose was discovered here, or among the things that were discovered here when they were doing the keylog fords, was the discovered materials going right back to the Neolithic. Stone Age axes, the Stone Age implements, a lot of stuff in the Bronze Age, spears, axes, and even one shrine was discovered, a medieval shrine of the 8th, 9th century, a lovely little house shrine known as the Keylog Shrine. Well, we can never be dead sure because there was no records kept as such, but there was so much stuff found here. This was a major crossing point. The two major weirs here, the Meelick weirs or fords, and the Keylog fords beside them. So this is a place of crossing going right back into ancient Irish history. And of course, the other thing that's important to state is that the land on the other side of the river, it is in County Offaly, but it's part of the Diocese of Clonfert, which is a diocese in Galway. And the reason for that is that the O'Maddens were the native chieftains here in this region, on the Galway side. But the O'Maddens held the parish of Lusma on the other side. So they had full control over these weirs here. So that was a strategic thing, if you like. You have control, and
on the river,
it has been
weirs.
suggested, you know, things like these were done to control access to places like Tara and that in prehistory. They're the things we'll never be sure of. But what is certain is that all of the land over there was all land held under the O'Maddens, the same as all of the land on this side was all held under the O'Maddens. So it goes right back to medieval times. So the core of this building dates back to 1414.
Wow.
It's on an island, a raised island, as you can see, even though there's very little water around us. There is a modern drain there today, but this would have been all enclosed by water back in the medieval period. So you can see how Meelick and all of its townlands here, it's really an archipelago of islands within a sort of a wide Shannon here, a very spread out river here at that height.
The gate against the sheep.
Yeah, to keep the sheep out.
Yeah.
Well, we're now standing in the cloister gart.
In the garden,
This is the garden. This is where the original cloister gart would have been back in the medieval period, back in the 15th century and onwards. And as I say,
so it was always a garden here.
It was always a garden.
Yeah.
That's the layout of the monastic enclosure, if you like. You have a garden, and then on three sides of the garden you actually have the houses themselves. They say the religious houses, the dormitory, the dining room, the chapter room, guest room, school, whatever else might be happening on the site, and there are changes. You know, there are differences. There is a loose rule of where you should be able to apportion them. You should be able to say, well, this is very likely to have been. Sometimes that changes. It depends on the model and that. So what we had here is we had an enclosure here. We actually had this wonderful enclosure here, and within that then you had this lovely green space, which was the gart or garden, and that was then enclosed again by an arcade, by a wall with arches in it, generally. And
where they
clergy
could walk around.
They could walk around, and they'd walk in a clockwise fashion, and they would recite their prayers, meditate, maybe read. In some instances in monastic houses we find that there are shelves, sort of an outdoor library where they can pick up a book and they can read as
while
around.
walking around. Yeah, okay.
And in some of them we also find that the clergy themselves can be buried in the footpath. And sometimes inside in the cloister. When we look at the European examples, we often find there's a major well inside. In you know, you'll often see wells in the core, in the heart of the cloister. And then that would have been roofed. Especially have to be roofed here in Ireland with our inclement weather, with rain and that. So
wind.
we can see the evidence here. We can see corbels in the walls, things like that.
And that was the place where the roof was sitting.
So it would come down as a lean-to and it would sit on top of the cloister wall then all around. And then on, well, we say in this case, we're actually on the south side, we actually have the church itself. So we have the major church, and priory churches were long churches, very long. The idea was that you could divide them into two segments. You have the choir at the east for the clergy, and then you have a divider in the middle, sometimes with a tower. There's no evidence for a tower here. It doesn't mean there wasn't one. It just means there's no clear evidence today. And there would have been a rood or a rood screen. That screen would divide the laity who were in the west end of the nave from the clergy themselves. So there's demarcation. People who would have attended Mass here would have attended Mass through the screen. They would have heard the Mass through the screen.
Yes.
And sometimes that screen would be open on certain days and that. So there would have been a lot of ritual here. The Franciscans themselves would have had to get up numerous times during the night and come down and sing here in choir.
Yeah.
They would have attended ceremonies during the day, and then at the same time they would have, some of them could have been out questing, looking for alms and that.
Yeah.
And then they're doing other things. They're burying the dead, and they're looking after general tasks here.
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
that's
so
lovely.
it's a very busy place, and the
Yeah.
fact that this is an island, it's a busy little island, and just something that we reflected on ourselves earlier.
Yeah.
You know, there's something special about the place itself, and you find this as a lot of these religious houses, that the sites are well chosen.
Yeah.
Now it could be that we have generations of prayer and people and holiness here, if you like, or it could be that these people sought out special places in the landscape
Yes.
that resonated with them.
Yes.
There's something there in that
Something
space.
special, yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
that has its own spiritualism, if you like,
Okay,
and
yeah.
that actually adds to the Christian worship that takes
something
place
like
there.
a special energy.
A special energy
Okay.
here, yeah. No, absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that's what's happening here. And then, as I mentioned earlier when we were approaching the building,
Yeah.
the model changed. They were no longer living in dormitories around the cloister as they were back in the 15th and 16th century.
Yes.
The place falls into disrepair for all sorts of reasons. There's all sorts of turmoil taking place in Ireland. The 17th century, we have the Cromwellians, we had the Reformation before that. We have a lot of things happening, same thing happening in Europe.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of changes within the religious houses, falling into disrepair. And what to do then in the 17th century is to build a house, a more commodious house.
Yeah.
So they move away from what they call the conventual life,
Yes.
living the life of friars in a convent,
Yeah.
to now living in a more modern convent, a late 17th century house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two big fireplaces and private apartments and
yes.
all the luxuries of any domestic house that you get in the landscape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably was thatched. It could have been slated, but very likely thatched. One of those big 17th century thatched mansions. And it would have looked lovely sitting within the ruins here. And then, of course,
Yeah.
with the backdrop of a chapel here beside
Yes.
it, where these guys can still pray and they can bury the dead. And that was, as I already mentioned, one of the things they did here is that they looked after the burial needs of people here. We have evidence of people coming from coming from all over the place, from different counties, different places, to be buried in Meelick.
In here.
Because it's almost like a powerhouse
Yeah.
of prayer to
Yeah.
release these souls from purgatory. Everybody believed that you had to spend a bit of time in purgatory.
Yes.
There was nobody perfect.
No.
So you needed that bit of help. And no
To
one
have to
better
go
than
to
these
heaven,
Franciscans
yeah.
here in
Yes.
Meelick to do
Yeah,
that.
okay.
And the ledgers
Yeah.
tell you that, because you see name after name after name of people
Yeah.
who were buried here. So it's a very interesting document. They don't survive in too many places, but where they do, they give us a great insight into the movements and the peoples.
Yes.
and that.
What happened?
So
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
a special place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the old story of this being the longest, I suppose, functioning Catholic church in Ireland, in one way is true, and in another way, you know, we have to look at the strict history. This was a chapel at one stage.
Yeah.
The site certainly saw worship right
Yeah.
through all of those periods.
Okay. This is the actual running church now? Is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah, it's one of three parish churches
Yeah.
that are in the parish of Aircourt. The modern parish of Aircourt consists of three medieval parishes, Meelick, Clonfert and Doonanukta, which is the Irish for Aircourt. Not strictly the Irish for Aircourt, but it was the original medieval parish. And the church here was given over to the parish in the 19th century after the last friar leaving here.
Yeah.
So it became a parish church at that stage. And it was restored, repaired and put back into use.
Rebuilt a bit. Yeah.
Yes. At that stage, when it was handed over, it would have been full of burials. There's one illustration from about the 1830s or thereabouts, which shows us with the gable missing on the east end.
Yeah.
It shows us with the cross that's now out in the yard up on the west gable. which is interesting because when we see the size, we just say, how did they manage that at that stage? It was really derelict, but the parish undertook the restoration of the church. So it became a parish church at that stage, and it's still a parish church. It's functioning here as a parish church. And it was in need of repair, we'll say, in the second half of the 20th century. So in the 1980s, a major restoration program was undertaken here. And as part of that, one of the things that the architect suggested was that it fit a rood screen, a modern rood screen, to give some sense of what would have been here in the medieval period.
Okay.
As I said, the original core of this building dates to the 15th century, with a lot of works in the 17th century. But they decided to get in an ecclesiastical architect, artist, a man called Ray Carroll, the late Ray Carroll, and Ray designed the rood screen here. Yeah. You have Mary on one side, John on the other side of the rood, or the cross itself, and the reredos is also some of his work. So it's probably in stark contrast to the building, but it gives a sense. And of course, the practical thing at that stage was that the church was a very big church. Yeah. They didn't need such a big church. No. So the church looks a lot fuller when you bring the altar forward, put in the rood screen, and create that space at the back where the choir now sing from and that. Yes. The building itself, as I say, was restored in the 1980s, and one of the decisions that was made at that stage was to leave the plaster off the walls. You know, some people love it, some people hate it. That's how it works with this type of thing. But what's important on the walls here are all of the 17th and 18th century, the mural plaques. Those plaques, and those plaques give great information on the families that were involved, that were buried here in Meelick. Yes. And the families from surrounding areas, but the people that you're going to see represented on these plaques are mainly the wealthier clientele in the wider community. Yeah. There's one effigial piece, one effigy here in the church itself, and that's a wonderful carving of St. Francis, and that's over here on the pier behind us, on the central pier between the two arches there. Yes. The two arches are actually leading out into two side chapels. So there was two chapels attached here.
On this side,
on that side, and another chapel above at the east end on that side as well.
But there are no remainings left.
The outlines of these two and part of the structural remains of the one on the east survives. Okay. But the St. Francis effigy is wonderful. We're not sure whether it came from a tomb. It could have been part of a 15th century tomb, or could equally have been part of the original cloister arcade that was here. And if it was, it means that the cloister here was highly ornate. I'm more inclined to think it was a tomb. You find these on tombs, they're referred to as weepers. You get a whole series of saints placed around the tomb, and their function, I suppose they're there as intercessors, people praying at the tomb, pray to these saints to intercede for them with the man above, to get them a dig out, if you like.
What do you think, how old is this?
It's 15th century.
15, definitely.
Definitely 15th century. It's late medieval, definitely 15th century. It shows St. Francis, he has a staff in one of his hands, and then he raises the other hand. And if you could get close enough, you'll see that there's a very small piercing in the hand. You will also see it in the breast. You will see a hole in the breast. His other hand, if you could see it, would have had a piercing in it, and the same with the 2 feet. Francis is one of the saints that carried the stigmata, in other words, the wounds, the 7 wounds, or the 5 wounds of Christ, of crucifixion. Yes. So he emulates Jesus in that sense. So it's important in a few ways. It's showing the stigmata and that link to the whole death and crucifixion of Christ. But the other thing is, it's going right back to the founder saint, the founder of the Franciscans. So it's proper that Francis should be represented in a Franciscan house. So it's a wonderful piece.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
It really is. No, it's a beautiful piece. It is beautiful.
Yeah. see this Martello Tower,
yes.
isn't it? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's one of only 2 inland Martellos in Ireland.
One of 2?
One of 2. Now there are two down south that are technically inland, but this one here on Tower Island, in the parish of Lusma in Offaly, even though we claim it here in Meelick. A lot of people refer to it as Meelick Tower.
Okay.
It's Meelick Tower because it's protecting the ford here at Meelick.
Yes.
But it's actually in Lusma in County Offaly, the parish of Lusma in County Offaly. But you have the Martello here, and you also have another Martello further upriver at Banagher. So they're the 2 Martellos. But what you also have here is you actually have a battery further up at Keelog, at the crossing at Keelog as well. And the same in Banagher. We have a number of batteries in that in Banagher. You have, and of course, the reason for all of this was that the British government were in fear of a French invasion.
Of Napoleon?
Of Napoleon invading Ireland. And of course what had happened at that stage is you had the United Irishmen, the rising of the United Irishmen, you had, if you like, the setting up of these new free nations, if you like, the republics throughout Europe.
Yes.
France, Ireland was fighting for that type of freedom, if you like, from England and things. And there was an emergence, if you like, of action. And there was communication going on between the Irish, who were fighting for freedom, and the French.
Okay.
And the plan was, or the hope was, that the French would come into Ireland. We wouldn't regard it as an invasion. So they just changed our language. We'd be speaking a strange sort of French now at this stage. Maybe. We'd never get our tongue around it.
Yeah.
But
so the Irish hoped that the French would come and
support
put the English
push
out.
the English back. And of course the fear then from an English perspective was that if the French got in, it's the back door to England.
Yes.
And it's hard to manage something. Now,
so they were afraid.
And of course, all of the movements were going to come either from the south coast or from the west coast.
Okay.
Coming in by sea.
Yes.
The west coast is too difficult to protect, too big and too cumbersome and that. So what they decided was that they'd build a series of fortifications along the Shannon, along the mid-Shannon.
Yeah.
Now, there were certain natural defences, such as the bogs that you have here in East Galway and that you couldn't bring cannon and you couldn't bring horse or gun across. So they were natural enough. But there was a fear that they could cross at Banagher. There was also a fear they could cross at Portumna. But the waters in Portumna are very deep.
Yes.
It's not a fording point.
No, there's a big,
So what they had there was a bridge. It's easy to demolish a bridge.
Yeah.
That was the plan in Portumna.
That's easy, yeah.
Level the bridge, nobody can come across. Whereas in Meelick, you had fording points, and certainly in summer, at that stage, you could actually have taken cannon across the river here with horses and that. So they built this wonderful elliptical-shaped Martello Tower here on Tower Island. And the same then they built the battery further up. You have Victoria Lock. Victoria Lock is one of the finest locks on the River Shannon.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's called
Beautiful.
after Queen Victoria. It was built in the Victorian era. It was opened in the 1840s, and you can see that on the bollards, I think 1843. Rhodes was involved in different engineers like that. But a wonderful piece of industrial riverine archaeology. Wonderful, colourful place, and colourful for a whole lot of reasons, to see the boats going through. Wonderful place for picnicking. The wonderful place to bring the sandwiches and sit down for a while. Yeah. But also then, complementing that, is the earlier lock, Omer's lock as we call it. Thomas Omer was an engineer of the 18th century, and there was an earlier canal and lock just further into Lusma.
Yeah.
Just a short walk from that.
Yes.
And that's on what's referred to as the Clonaghinog Canal. Clonaghinog is a townland.
This canal beside.
Beside the old lock house.
Yes.
And you know, it's a whole cultural package right across, shared between two counties, two provinces, people with common interests.
Yeah.
You know, the people of Lusma, a lot of them would have buried here in Meelick. There was a lot of intermarriage between the two places, a lot of close parallels with the people in that.
Yes.
So there's both culturally and I suppose architecturally, historically and archaeologically, there's a wonderful connection between the two sides of the river here.
Yes.
Yeah, and this walking route that I talked about really complements that, because it makes it possible now for us to meet each other crossing the Shannon, if you like.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Wonderful, absolutely.
It's really wonderful, yeah.
we're actually standing on what's known as Meelick weir.
Yeah.
But effectively what you're looking at here is a modern walkway that was put in here by Waterways Ireland, opened in 2021.
Ah,
the original,
really new. Yeah.
Really new. So this is a very new, in every sense, it's a new amenity. But it's more than an amenity. It's also a functioning weir and series of sluices here. And the purpose of this really was to control the water levels on the Shannon.
Oh, yeah.
So initially when they undertook the works here in the late 1830s and 40s, one of the things they had to do was they had to control waters and divert it. So a certain amount of works would have taken place here. And then later in the 19th century, other works took place. And again, then in the 1920s, with the ESB setting up the hydroelectric scheme down in Ardna Crusha in Limerick, this was also modified and a lot more work's done here. So a lot of the work that you see underneath here dates from the 1920s, the late 1920s and that.
Wow.
So effectively what we're looking at here is a weir, but the walkway itself is, I suppose, it's one of the greatest amenities that has been put in recent years on the River Shannon. It's an amazing thing because it allows people to walk across. We're just after witnessing probably 30 or 40 people walk across here before we started this recording.
Yeah.
And they're walking here from Meelick in County Galway across to Lusmore in County Offaly, and they're going to get their boat back up to Banagher.
Yeah.
So it's able to create a lovely circular motion, if you like. It's people walk across here. We come down here ourselves on a regular basis with the grandson.
Oh.
You can come down here on Sunday and you can meet 50 or 60 people walking here.
Yeah.
Some
because
people on bicycles.
It's a lovely walk.
It's a lovely walk.
Yes.
And also what's lovely about it, lovely sound, the sound of the water rushing underneath.
Yeah.
It's very fast flowing.
Yeah.
And of course the levels are up a little bit. That can be a lot more shallow than this later in the summer.
Yeah.
There's also a series of fish passes on this to allow the salmon and that back up into the upper side of the river.
Yeah.
So all of this is all part of, if you like, the industrialization and I suppose the modification of the river, partially to control water levels, and that's really got to do with water traffic and that. And the other then is to control the levels for the power station down there at the Crusher. Now that has become obsolete in many ways. It's no longer an essential part of our national grid, but it's still there, and I suppose all of these management systems have to be left in place, because if you remove this, you'll end up flooding all of the lands further down. So it's about management and control, and that's something that I suppose it's a mooted point among farmers as well. But it's not something that I'm going to really discuss, other than say that, you know, at times there are pinch points here when the river gets very flooded. The weirs here are not able to take the waters, and we get a lot of back flooding further up the river. So it causes problems for landowners and farmers.
So it's very important.
So this is an important place. It's an important place to manage. And what's actually interesting here is when you look down here, we can see some of the surviving islands and the little rivers, the little rivulets, if you like, that are here. But when you look back up on the other side, you'll see a broad Shannon here, a much quieter, more silent Shannon up here. That's because all of the islands, the fords, the fish weirs and all of that were here were all removed in the 1920s.
Yes.
The other thing that we have to, when you walk across this weir, it gives you access to Tower Island. So for those that are a little bit more intrepid, they can actually travel down through the woodlands there, and they can visit the tower. And of course, when they're walking down then to Victoria Lock, they're going to walk beside a canal. So the waterway that comes out here into the Shannon, that allows access up from Victoria Lock, is actually a man-made canal. So it's a canal of the 19th century. So there was a lot of canalisation and the changing of the river around here, but it's still an absolutely wonderful place. The noise of the water, the sounds, you can hear this rolling from a distance. You know, and for local people, it's something that they're used to. It's almost, if this stopped, to be a huge change.
That's weird.
It's weird. There's something wrong. There's a sound missing. But the other wonderful thing here is that you come down here any day and you'll see herons, you'll see kingfishers, you'll see swans, ducks. You'll see all sorts of wildlife here from this, and it's a great place to get photographs from.
Yeah.
And of course, the local kayaking club use this as well, because you can imagine kayakers out there doing all the twists and twirls and everything, you know. So it's a wonderful, wonderful place and a wonderful space, both natural and built heritage.
Yeah. And if you also want to explore the Erne and the Shannon by boat, we have a special offer for you from the hire boat company Manor House Marine. The website is here down below. You get 10% discount for next year, for 2027, with our code BoatTIME27. And now we go on with the video. Oh, so a beautiful day for this experience.
Yeah, it's just lovely. It's just lovely. It's absolutely lovely.
Yeah, Christy, thank you so much for this marvelous experience, for exploring the past, all the different types of past we have seen today. It was stunning. It was marvelous. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you actually enjoyed it. And,
yes, I'm overwhelmed.
That's good. That's good. Well, that's important. And of course, we only touched the tip of the iceberg, really. It's only when people visit here and experience it for themselves and feel it and smell it and hear it, and you know, that's when you really engage with the place and see things that we didn't even touch on. You know, there's a lot more. And no, and I'm delighted to be part of it.
So thank you so much.
Not at all. No, you're more than welcome.
And maybe we can do next year
another
tour.
Another tour. Just make sure I'm still on the planet.
Oh yes. You have to. You have to wait for us.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you, Christy.
I'll hang out.
You.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, give me a hug.
I will indeed.
Thank you.
No, that's lovely. Yeah.